she whispered. "I'm not clean anymore." The rancher lifted the cloth and froze. The sun had just disappeared behind the hills, leaving the ranch bathed in soft golden light, fading into dusk. The air was calm, the quiet broken only by the low hum of crickets and the distant murmur of the river winding through the property. The rancher, a man in his 40s with broad shoulders and a weathered face that spoke of years spent under the sun, was finishing his chores for the day. Desk. He had been out in the field since early morning, checking fences, feeding the animals, and making sure everything was in order. Life on the ranch was simple but hard, and he had grown used to its rhythm. Yet tonight, an uneasy feeling hung in the air, though he could not say why. He was wiping his hands on a rag when he noticed something unusual at the edge of the property. A small figure was stumbling along the dirt path leading toward the ranch, barely visible in the fading light. It was a woman, and she moved slowly, as if each step was a struggle. Her clothes were dusty, her hair tangled, and she seemed exhausted beyond measure. The rancher's first instinct was caution. He had lived alone in this area for years and had seen strangers wander close, sometimes by accident, sometimes with trouble following them. But as he squinted, he saw the fear in her eyes. She wasn't here to cause trouble. She was seeking help. Without hesitation, the rancher set down his rag and walked toward her. "Hey, you okay there?" he called gently. His voice was calm but firm, carrying across the quiet fields. The woman stopped and looked at him, her eyes wide with panic. But there was also a hint of relief. She didn't answer at first. Instead, she took a shaky step forward, and then another. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. I need help," she said, trembling. The rancher nodded slowly, his expression softening. "Come on, let's get you somewhere safe, Desperance." He motioned for her to follow him toward the barn. The woman hesitated, then obeyed, each step slow and careful. She didn't speak again, and the rancher noticed that her hands were shaking. She looked like she had been through a lot, maybe days without rest, food, or comfort. He felt a pang of concern, mixed with a strange curiosity. Who was she? Desk. And what had brought her here? As they reached the barn, the rancher opened the door and gestured for her to enter. "You can sit here for now," he said. The barn was warm, with hay piled neatly in one corner and the scent of horses finked in the air. He guided her to a clean spot and asked softly, "Do you want some water?" She nodded quickly, and he handed her a cup from the small water jug he always kept in the barn. She drank slowly, her hands clutching the cup as if it were a lifeline. Finally, she looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears.
"I'm not clean anymore," she whispered.
The rancher froze for a moment, unsure what she meant. His mind raced through possibilities. Illness, injury, something worse. But he didn't let panic show. Ow! He glances around in Despai. He glances around in Despai. He glances around in Desk. Whatever it is, we'll handle it. You're safe here. He wanted her to trust him, to feel that she could let go of some of her fear, even if just a little. The woman shivered and looked down at her feet. I can't let anyone see me," she said. Her voice cracked, and the rancher could hear the weight of shame and fear in her words. He crouched down to meet her at eye level. "No one will hurt you here." "Oh, I won't judge you. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. Just know that you're safe."
His tone was calm, steady, and firm, the kind of voice that carried reassurance without pressure.
She seemed to relax slightly at that, though the tremble in her body did not stop. He noticed small details, the dirt under her fingernails, the dark circles under her eyes, the faint bruises along her arms that peeked from under her sleeves. Clearly, she had been through a lot, and perhaps not all of it could be explained in words. The rancher felt a surge of protective instinct. He had faced storms, wild animals, and even dangerous visitors on the ranch, but nothing had prepared him for this kind of helplessness in front of someone so vulnerable. He grabbed the clean cloth from his workbench and approached her slowly. "I can help you clean up a bit," he said softly. She flinched at his words, hugging herself tightly.
No.
"You don't understand," she whispered, almost pleading. "I'm not clean, Bess." She looked away, her voice trembling. The rancher paused, unsure what she meant exactly, but he didn't withdraw. He knelt beside her and said gently, "It's okay. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. You don't have to face it alone." The woman's hands trembled as she reached for the cloth he held out. She brought it close to her chest and whispered, "Please, just lift it for me, carefully." The rancher nodded slowly, understanding that this was a delicate moment, not just physically, but emotionally. He reached out with care, lifting the cloth, and froze as he saw the extent of her condition. His heart skipped a beat, not out of fear, but from shock and empathy. The injuries, the signs of struggle, they told a story he hadn't fully imagined. A story of someone who had endured more than most could survive. For a long moment, neither spoke. The barn was silent except for the faint sound of her shaky breathing. The rancher carefully studied her, realizing that his first task was to make her feel safe and cared for. He didn't rush, didn't ask questions she wasn't ready to answer. Instead, he prepared a basin of warm water and some clean towels. "Psst, we'll take it slow," he said quietly. "One step at a time." "Desk." She nodded, her eyes glistening with tears, a mix of relief and fear washing over her face. As she allowed him to help, small details emerged. The rancher noticed the way she flinched at sudden movements, the way she held herself as if bracing for impact. He realized she had learned to protect herself constantly, to expect danger around every corner. Yet, in this safe space, under his calm presence, she began to let go just a little. She let him clean her hands, her face, and gently tend to minor injuries. Each motion was slow and careful, respectful of her boundaries, and each time he reassured her with words, she seemed to trust him more. The rancher found himself talking quietly as he worked, sharing small things about the ranch, the animals, the routines, and even his own life. It was a way to keep her distracted, to create a sense of normalcy. She listened in small bursts, sometimes responding with a whisper or a nod. Gradually, the tension in her body began to ease. For the first time in what felt like days, or maybe weeks, she felt that she could breathe without constant fear. Night had fully fallen by the time they finished. The barn was now illuminated by a single lantern, casting a warm glow on the hay and wooden walls. Outside, the stars shone faintly, the moon casting silver light over the fields. The rancher prepared a small, simple bed for her in the corner, using blankets and hay for comfort. "You can rest here tonight," he said softly. "No one will bother you." "I'll be just outside if you need anything." She nodded, eyes heavy with exhaustion. She whispered, "Thank you. I don't know how to say it, but thank you." The rancher smiled gently, a quiet strength in his gaze. "You don't have to say anything, just rest." "That's enough for now." As she curled up under the blankets, the rancher stepped outside, looking at the darkened fields. The wind rustled gently through the trees, and he felt a mixture of concern and resolve. Whatever her story was, he knew that he couldn't turn her away. He had to protect her, guide her, and help her heal, not just physically, but emotionally too. He stayed on the porch for a while, watching over the ranch and the sleeping figure in the barn. Questions swirled in his mind. Where had she come from? What had caused her injuries? And most importantly, how could he help her rebuild trust and find safety again? He knew the road ahead would be long and uncertain, but one thing was clear: he wouldn't let her face it alone. The night was quiet, but inside the rancher a plan was already forming. A plan to provide shelter, care, and perhaps even hope. In the stillness he felt the weight of responsibility, but also a spark of determination. The woman's whispered words, "I'm not clean anymore,"
echoed in his mind, not as a judgment, but as a plea for compassion. And he understood, in that moment, that being clean wasn't just about the body.
It was about feeling safe, valued, and respected. And he would do everything in his power to help her find that again. The night deepened, and the stars above twinkled like distant promises. The rancher finally went to his own room, keeping one ear open for any sign that she might need him. Sleep came slowly, his mind still alert. In his heart, he felt a quiet sense of purpose. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions, and perhaps new revelations. But for now, in the soft glow of the lantern, in the gentle warmth of the barn, he knew one thing: someone had trusted him completely, and he would honor that trust, no matter what lay ahead. The next morning, sunlight poured gently through the cracks in the barn walls, casting long lines of gold across the hay. The woman stirred beneath the blankets, her eyes fluttering open, cautious and wary. For a moment she froze, as if remembering the night before, the rancher's calm presence, and the strange mix of fear and relief she had felt. Slowly, she sat up, brushing strands of hair from her face, and looked around. The barn felt different in the daylight. Shadows had receded, revealing the warmth and quiet order of the place. She could see the animals in their stalls, the neat rows of tools along the walls, and the gentle flicker of the lantern left from the night before. The familiar smells of hay, leather, and the faint scent of horses filled the air. The rancher stepped in from outside, carrying a small basin of water and a towel. "Good morning," he said gently, his voice steady. "You slept well." She shook her head slightly, unsure if she had truly slept, but nodded anyway. I think so," she whispered. Her voice was soft, almost as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile sense of safety she had felt. "Good," he said, setting the basin down. "We can start slowly. Nothing rushed." "Just some fresh water to wash your face." He knelt beside her again, just like the night before, careful not to make sudden movements. She hesitated, but eventually she allowed him to help. The water was warm, soothing, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt a small measure of comfort. As he worked, the rancher noticed the faint bruises along her arms and the marks on her hands. His heart tightened, and a quiet anger rose inside him, not at her, but at the circumstances that had brought her here, hurt and afraid. He said nothing, though, choosing to focus on the task at hand. Words could wait. Actions were more important now. Finally, after a while, she looked at him, her eyes wide and hesitant. I should tell you," she whispered. "You need to know everything."
If you're going to help me.
The rancher nodded, encouraging her without pressure. "Whenever you're ready, I'm listening. There's no rush." She took a deep breath, her fingers trembling as she clasped her hands together. I had nowhere else to go. I ran from a place where I wasn't safe. And then things happened.
I got hurt. I didn't know what to do.
I couldn't face anyone. Her voice broke, and the rancher's chest tightened. He could hear the raw pain in her words, the fear of judgment, the shame she carried. I understand, he said softly. Pass. But you don't have to face it alone anymore. I'll help you. No questions asked, no judgment. You're safe here. She stared at him, searching his face for any hint of disbelief or anger. Finding none, she seemed to relax just slightly, as if a small weight had been lifted. Yet the tension in her shoulders and the wary flicker in her eyes reminded him that the journey ahead would not be easy. The rancher carefully helped her with simple tasks, washing her hands, cleaning small scrapes, and dressing them with clean bandages. Each movement was slow and respectful, giving her control over the process. She flinched occasionally, but he would pause and wait, letting her guide the pace. Gradually, she allowed herself to trust him a little more. After a while, she sat quietly, looking around the barn. I don't know how I ended up here, she whispered. Everything happened so fast. I barely had time to think. The rancher nodded. I can only imagine what that must have been like. But you made it here. You're safe now, and we'll figure out the next steps together. He kept his voice calm, steady, offering reassurance without forcing her to share more than she could handle. She hesitated, then said, There's more. I'm not just hurt physically. I don't know if I can ever feel normal again. He didn't flinch at her words. Instead, he nodded slowly. Normal. That's a hard word, but we can work on feeling okay again. You'll have help, and you'll get stronger day by day. His tone was steady, grounded, and gentle, a lifeline she clung to without even realizing it. The woman's eyes glistened with tears. I'm afraid, she admitted. Afraid I'll never be okay. Afraid that if anyone finds out, they'll judge me. You don't have to worry about judgment here, he said softly. Not from me. Not from anyone here. You're safe, and the only thing that matters is helping you heal. She looked down, drawing in a shaky breath. I've been alone for so long, no one to trust. No one to lean on. Her voice was barely audible. The rancher felt a deep sense of empathy. He knew what it was to be isolated, to face challenges without support.
I wanted to give her the safety and care she desperately needed. I'll be here, he said firmly.
Every step of the way. You won't be alone anymore. For a long while, silence fell over the barn, filled only with the soft rustling of the hay and the faint sounds of animals in their stalls. She sat quietly, her eyes tracing the beams of sunlight that had crept across the floor. Slowly, she began to feel a tiny flicker of hope, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. The rancher prepared a simple breakfast, a piece of bread, some cheese, and a cup of warm tea. He set it down for her and gestured for her to eat. Then, she hesitated but eventually took small bites, her hands still trembling. The act of eating, simple as it was, seemed to ground her in the present, reminding her that she was alive, safe, and cared for. As the morning passed, the rancher worked on the ranch, keeping one eye on her. Occasionally he would check in, asking if she needed anything, speaking gently to ensure she felt supported. She responded with small nods or whispered answers, slowly adjusting to the idea that she was in a place where she could rest without fear. At one point, she asked quietly, Do you always live like this? All alone?" "Not completely alone. I have the animals. And this land, it keeps me busy. But yes, mostly it's just me." "Why do you ask?" "Just curious," she said softly.
It's peaceful here. Different from everything else I've known.
She glanced toward the window, watching the light shift over the fields. Maybe I can stay here for a while." "You can stay as long as you need," he said. No questions, no judgment. Just a safe place to recover. As the day went on, the rancher carefully assessed her condition. He realized she had injuries that needed proper attention, possibly medical help beyond what he could provide. Yet he also knew that rushing her into the outside world could cause her panic or fear. He needed a plan, one that would keep her safe and ensure she received the care she needed. "You're stronger than you think," he said quietly as he cleaned a small scrape on her arm. "I can see it in the way you've survived all this. You've already made it through so much. And I'll help you finish the journey." She looked at him, a faint tear slipping down her cheek. I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You don't have to," he said firmly. "Just trust me. That's enough." Hours passed. She rested while he worked on the ranch, the rhythm of his labor offering a strange sense of normalcy. Occasionally, she would peek out of the barn door watching him feed the animals or mend a fence. There was something calming in his presence, something steady and reliable. The first time in a long time, she began to believe that perhaps she could heal, perhaps she could feel safe again. Late in the afternoon, a gentle breeze drifted through the barn, carrying with it the scent of wildflowers from the nearby hills. The rancher paused to watch it, and she noticed him smiling faintly. "It's beautiful here," she said softly. "It is," he agreed. "Sometimes the simplest things can feel like a miracle, especially after everything you've been through." She nodded, absorbing the calm, the quiet, the sense that for the first time in weeks, maybe months, she could breathe without fear. And in that moment, something shifted inside her. A tiny seed of trust had been planted. A spark of hope had ignited. She still had a long road ahead, but she was no longer entirely alone. As evening approached, the rancher prepared a simple supper and they ate in silence, the quiet companionship speaking louder than words. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fears to face, but he also knew that she was willing to take the first steps toward recovery, and he would be there, every step of the way. That night, as darkness fell over the ranch and the first stars appeared in the sky, she lay on the small bed of hay, feeling a fragile sense of safety. She whispered softly to herself, almost as if testing the words, Maybe I can be okay." The rancher sat nearby, keeping watch, listening to the quiet sounds of the night. He felt a mixture of concern and determination. She had survived so much, and he would not let her face the rest of the world alone. Whatever had happened to her, he would help her find strength, dignity, and a chance at a new beginning. And as the night deepened, with the stars shining above and the ranch bathed in soft moonlight, he knew that this was only the beginning of a journey, one filled with challenges, discoveries, and the slow, steady rebuilding of trust and hope. The morning light crept softly into the barn, filling the space with a warm glow. The woman stirred, but this time her movements were slower, hesitant. She sat up and rubbed her eyes, taking in the barn and the rancher nearby. He was busy tending to the animals, feeding the horses, and checking the water buckets. The quiet rhythm of the ranch was comforting, but there was a tension in the air that both of them felt, though neither spoke about it yet.
The rancher glanced at her and smiled gently. "Morning," he said.
"Sleep well?" I think so," she whispered, her voice still shaky. Her hands rested in her lap as she looked down, unwilling to meet his eyes for more than a moment. She was aware of the bruises on her arms, the scratches on her hands, and the lingering discomfort in her body. Each movement reminded her of the struggles she had endured, and a small voice inside her told her that her journey was far from over. The rancher approached her slowly, carrying a clean towel and a basin of warm water. "I thought we could start the day with something simple," he said. "Just washing up a bit, nothing more." "We'll take it slow." She hesitated but eventually nodded. She trusted him, though only partially. The events of the past days had taught her that trust was dangerous, that it could be broken in an instant. But something about the rancher's steady, calm demeanor made her feel that maybe, just maybe, she could allow herself to lean on someone. As he gently helped her wash her face and hands, he noticed something he had not fully seen before. A deeper mark on her wrist, partially hidden by her sleeve. It was a small cut, older than the others, but it told a story. A story of someone who had tried to endure too much on their own, of someone who had been afraid to ask for help. The rancher's heart ached, but he said nothing, choosing instead to focus on the act of care. Words could come later. Once she was cleaned and dressed in the simple clothes he had set aside for her, she sat quietly on the hay, watching him move about the barn. Her eyes were drawn to the horses, the goats, the chickens, and the rhythm of his work. Presence of routine brought a strange comfort. For the first time in what felt like months, she felt the faintest glimmer of normalcy. I should tell you everything," she said softly. Her hands fidgeted in her lap.
"If you're going to help me, you need to know the truth."
The rancher knelt down to meet her gaze. "Whenever you're ready," he said. "There's no rush and no pressure. I'll listen, and we'll take it one step at a time."
I ran from a place where I wasn't safe. Someone I trusted hurt me."
Not just once, many times. I tried to leave, but it was never easy. And when I finally did, I thought I could escape. But I got hurt again. I didn't know who to turn to. Her voice trembled, and tears threatened to spill. The rancher's expression softened. He placed a gentle hand on hers. "Psst. It's okay," he said. "You don't have to face this alone anymore. You're safe here, and I'll help you figure out the next steps. By step, together."
She looked at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and relief.
"I'm afraid," she admitted. "Afraid I'll never be okay. Afraid that if anyone finds out, they'll judge me." "You don't have to worry about judgment here," he said calmly. "Not from me. Not from anyone on this ranch. The only thing that matters is helping you heal."
For a long moment,
They sat in silence.
Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of wildflowers and fresh earth. Inside the barn, the quiet was filled with the subtle rhythm of trust slowly building. She began to relax slightly, letting go of some of the tension that had gripped her body since the night she arrived.
As the day progressed, the rancher realized that her injuries required more care than he could provide alone.
There were deeper marks, signs of past trauma, and lingering pain that needed proper attention. But he also knew that taking her to an unfamiliar place too quickly could trigger fear or panic. He had to find a balance, protect her while ensuring she received the care she needed. "I think we should get you checked by a doctor," he said gently during a break in the afternoon. "There are some injuries that need proper care. But I'll be with you the entire time. You won't be alone." Bashan. She hesitated, the thought of leaving the ranch and stepping into the outside world making her anxious. I don't know, she said. What if they judge me, or I can't handle it? The rancher placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll go together. I'll explain everything."
You don't have to do anything by yourself. The most important thing is your safety and your health.
"We'll take it slow, I promise." She nodded, though uncertainty still lingered in her eyes. But there was a flicker of trust now, a small glimmer of hope that perhaps she could face this challenge with someone by her side. As evening approached, they prepared for the trip. The rancher packed a small bag with essentials, clean clothes, bandages, and supplies to ensure she was comfortable. He made sure she had food and water for the journey, speaking softly and calmly, reassuring her at every step. When they finally left the ranch, the woman held tightly onto his arm, her trust in him growing with each passing moment. The ride was quiet, both of them absorbed in their own thoughts. She glanced out the window at the passing fields, the sun dipping behind distant hills, and felt a strange sense of awe. The world outside was vast and unpredictable, but with him by her side, it felt less frightening. At the doctor's office, the rancher stayed close, guiding her through the process. She was nervous, her hands shaking, but his presence offered a steadying comfort. The doctor examined her carefully, noting the injuries and signs of trauma. He spoke kindly, explaining each step and ensuring she understood what was happening. The woman listened, her breathing gradually slowing as she realized she was being treated with respect and care, not judgment. After the examination, the rancher helped her back to the car. "See?" he said softly. "Nothing to be afraid of! You were brave!" She smiled faintly, a small spark of relief in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. I don't know how I could have done this without you."
"You didn't have to," he said. "You're not alone anymore."
That's what matters. As they returned to the ranch, the sun had almost set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. She looked out the window, feeling a quiet sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. The rancher's calm presence, his patience, and his care had made her realize that healing was possible, even after the darkest experiences. Back at the barn, they settled in for the night. The rancher prepared a simple dinner, and they ate quietly, the silence filled with a sense of companionship and understanding. She felt a growing sense of trust, a feeling that she could finally begin to let go of some of the fear that had dominated her life for so long. Later, as she lay on the hay, wrapped in the blankets, she whispered to herself, almost as if testing the words, maybe I can be okay." The rancher sat nearby, keeping watch. He felt a mixture of concern and determination. He knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but he also knew that she was willing to take the first steps toward recovery, and he would be there every step of the way. Night fell, and the barn was filled with the quiet sounds of the animals resting. Outside, the stars began to appear, twinkling faintly in the clear sky. The woman felt a fragile sense of safety, something she had not felt in months. She knew the journey ahead would be long, but for the first time she believed that healing was possible. The rancher watched over her, aware that her trust had been earned slowly, carefully, and that it would take time to rebuild fully. He had seen the fear in her eyes, the pain she carried, and the courage it took to even arrive at his ranch. He felt a quiet admiration for her resilience and a deep determination to protect and support her. In the soft glow of the lantern, with the night stretching quietly around them, both of them understood that this was only the beginning of a journey. One filled with challenges, moments of fear and moments of hope, but they would face it together, step by step, day by day. The barn was quiet, the world outside sleeping under the vast sky. Inside, trust was slowly growing, and with it, the first glimmers of hope that healing, and perhaps even happiness, could one day return. Morning came slowly at the ranch, with soft sunlight spilling over the hills and the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze. The woman awoke on the hay, stretching cautiously. For the first time she felt a small sense of calm. The night had been quiet, peaceful, and though sleep had been light, she felt some relief from the tension that had weighed her down for so long. The rancher was already up, tending to the animals, his movements steady and calm. He looked up when she stirred and smiled. "Good morning," he said softly. "Did you sleep okay?" "I think so," she whispered. Her voice was quieter, steadier than before. She felt a little more secure, though still aware of the fragile state of her emotions. The barn no longer felt intimidating. Instead, it seemed like a place where she could start to rebuild herself. The rancher approached with a warm towel and some fresh water. "Let's start slowly," he said. "Just a wash to wake you up and make you feel comfortable." She nodded, allowing him to help. As he gently cleaned her face and hands, she felt the calm reassurance she had been clinging to over the past days. Once she was dressed and ready, he handed her a small breakfast. They ate together in quiet companionship, the morning sun casting soft light on the barn walls. She was beginning to feel a small but real sense of trust, not just in him, but in the idea that maybe she could be safe and cared for again. After breakfast, the rancher suggested they take a walk outside. "Fresh air always helps," he said. She hesitated at first, her mind filled with old fears, but the invitation was gentle and respectful. Slowly she rose and followed him outside. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of grass and earth. Birds chirped faintly in the distance, and the hills stretched in quiet, welcoming silence. She walked slowly, taking in the beauty of the land, feeling the sun on her face. There was a strange comfort in the rhythm of her steps alongside the rancher's steady pace. "You're doing really well," he said softly. "Each day, little by little, you're stronger. And you don't have to face anything alone." She glanced at him, a faint smile touching her lips. I didn't think I could feel safe again," she admitted. "But I feel it now. A little. Maybe more than a little." "That's good," he said quietly. "It's not about rushing. Healing takes time. And you're already doing better than you think." They walked in silence for a while, the only sound being their footsteps and the soft whisper of the wind through the grass. For the first time, she felt a sense of belonging, not just at the ranch, but in the idea that someone could care for her without expecting anything in return. Back at the barn, the rancher prepared a plan to help her recover fully. He contacted a doctor he trusted, ensuring that she could receive the medical care she needed. The woman felt nervous about the appointment, but this time the rancher's calm support made it easier to face. The doctor examined her carefully, taking time to explain everything and reassure her. She realized that her injuries were healing, and the deeper wounds, emotional and physical, could also be treated with patience and care. For the first time in months, she felt hope, that life could be different. Returning to the ranch, she sat quietly on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the hills. The rancher joined her, offering a warm cup of tea. They sat together in silence, the quiet companionship speaking louder than words. "You've come a long way," he said softly, "and you're still moving forward. That's what matters."
Each step you take is a victory. She looked at him, tears glistening in her eyes.
I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You've done so much, more than anyone ever has. You don't have to thank me," he said. "Just focus on getting stronger. That's all I care about." Over the next few weeks, the woman's recovery continued. She learned to trust again, first in small ways, then in bigger ones. She helped care for the animals, learning routines and gaining confidence. Each day brought a little more freedom from fear, a little more belief that life could be safe and kind. The rancher guided her through every step, patient and steady. He never pressured her, never judged her, only offered calm reassurance and support. And slowly, she began to see herself not as someone broken or unclean, but as someone capable of healing, capable of living again. One afternoon, she helped the rancher mend a fence. They worked together, side by side, laughing quietly at small mistakes and celebrating little successes. The work was simple, but it gave her a sense of purpose and accomplishment she hadn't felt in a long time. "That's it," he said, smiling as they finished the last post. "See what you can do when you're not carrying the weight of fear alone?" She laughed softly, the sound light and freeing. I didn't realize how heavy it had been," she admitted. "But now, I feel lighter, safer, and stronger." He nodded. "Good. That's exactly what I want for you." Evenings at the ranch grew easier. They shared simple meals, spoke quietly, and watched the sun set over the hills. She learned the rhythms of the ranch, the habits of the animals, and the quiet routines that brought peace. And with each passing day, the shadow of fear that had haunted her began to recede, replaced by trust, confidence, and hope. One night, as she sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, she whispered softly to herself, "I think I'm okay now. I really am." The words felt strange, even miraculous. She had spent so long believing that safety and kindness were impossible. And now, they were real. The rancher joined her, sitting quietly beside her. "You are okay," he said. "And if you ever feel uncertain again, remember this. You have strength. You have courage. And you have someone who believes in you."
Her eyes glistened with tears, but this time they were tears of relief and gratitude.
I do feel stronger," she whispered. "I feel clean. Not just outside, but inside. I feel like me again." He nodded, a quiet smile on his face. "That's exactly what I hoped for. Healing isn't just about fixing what's broken. It's about finding yourself again. And you've done that." As the night deepened, the stars appeared, twinkling over the ranch like distant promises. She leaned back, feeling the calm of the land, the animals, and the man who had given her care and trust. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly safe. She could rest, knowing that the path ahead, though still uncertain in many ways, was filled with hope and support. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. She regained strength, both physically and emotionally. The rancher's patient guidance helped her learn that life could be gentle, that trust was possible, and that her experiences, while painful, did not define her. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant shades of orange and pink, she stood at the edge of the field, taking in the view. She felt a deep sense of gratitude, a quiet joy that had seemed impossible before. She turned to the rancher and smiled. I'm really okay now, she said softly.
Thank you for everything. You don't need to thank me, he replied, his voice calm and steady. You did all the hard work yourself.
I only helped guide you along the way. She nodded, understanding that healing was a partnership, but that her courage and resilience had carried her through. I feel free, she whispered. Free to live, to trust, to be me. He smiled, quietly proud. That's the greatest reward, he said. Knowing that someone you care for can stand tall again, even after everything they've endured. That night, as she rested in the barn, she finally felt a deep sense of peace. The long journey of fear, pain, and uncertainty had brought her to a place of trust, hope, and renewal. She whispered softly into the quiet night, I am clean. I am safe. I am okay. Desperate. Outside, the rancher watched the stars, reflecting on the past days. He felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that his patience, care, and compassion had helped someone rebuild her life. And in the soft silver light of the moon, the barn and the land around it felt like a sanctuary, a place where healing, hope, and trust could flourish. The woman's journey was not just a story of survival, but a story of renewal. She had learned that kindness could exist, that trust could be rebuilt, and that life, even after darkness, could hold beauty, warmth, and safety. And as she finally drifted into sleep, she felt a sense of wholeness she had not known in years, a feeling of being truly, completely alive.